We're talking screens today. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Greg. Welcome to 3D Make It. It's that time of year again where screens are in the air. What? Yes, another screen video. We've got lots of screens to show you today. First up in our lineup is the littlest screen. It is the 2.4 version 1.1 from BigTreeTech. It features USB connectivity, SD card connectivity, touchscreen mode, and Marlin mode. It does not have some of the fancier features you'll see on the other models, as this is one of the earlier screens from BigTreeTech. Next we have the TFT 3.5 V2. This screen features SD card support and optional Wi-Fi, and it is only touch mode. This screen does not support the Marlin mode and does not have an encoder. It has optional Wi-Fi and a couple of extra UART connectors. This screen was featured on the Legend 3D printer and is available from BigTreeTech's main stores. Next up is the BigTreeTech 3.5 V3. The V3 was quite an upgrade over the V2. It now supports SD card, USB, optional Wi-Fi, touch mode, and Marlin mode, like its bigger brothers. Now we come to our first of our brand new screens, the TFT 4.3 V3. This is one of 3 new screens from BigTreeTech. It features USB connectivity, SD card connectivity, optional Wi-Fi. NeoPixels has an asterisk, and I'll get to that in a minute. Filament runout connection, power supply control, touchscreen mode, and Marlin mode. The reason the NeoPixel with an asterisk is on there is the knob has a NeoPixel LED changeable LED on it, and the NeoPixel plug will mimic whatever color you have set for your knob. Next up is the TFT 5.0 V3. This is the largest screen I have, as the 7.0 was out of stock. It features USB connectivity, SD card connectivity, optional Wi-Fi, the same NeoPixel limitation as the previous one, filament runout, power supply control, touch mode, and Marlin mode. The NeoPixel limitation is the same with the knob. Whatever color you set for the light up knob will mimic on the NeoPixel port on the rear of this unit. Now that we've had a look at the screens, let's talk about some of the features. You have a lot of options when you use these screens. One of those options is changing the theme of the screen. There are 3 themes available. Let's take a look at them. First up, we have the Unified Menu Material theme. This is one of the original themes that was updated to have the live tiles and whatnot. Very standard theme. It'll probably ship on the device. Next, we have an updated version called the Hybrid Red Menu Material theme. This one's not bad. I might use it on one of my printers, but it's not my favorite. My favorite theme is the new Hybrid Round Miracle Menu theme. This one has just a nice contrast. The buttons look sharp. It looks very modern and very easy to understand with the different icons. So now I'm going to show you how to switch between modes. If you hold your button down, it'll then switch to a menu. In this menu, you can choose between the LCD 128 mode and back and forth. So let's choose that and go into Marlin mode. And voila, we're back in Marlin mode. Primarily I use this mode, but you can use whichever mode you want. So if we hold the button again, that'll get us back to this mode, and then we can choose and go to touchscreen. So now that we've seen all the themes and whatnot, we need to know, where do we get them? Well, if you go to the GitHub for BigTreeTech and click on the screen firmware, you can download the latest version of their software. It has a lot of instructions on how to set things up, the different themes that are available, and how to get going with the software. So we'll just download. You click the get the code and download the zip, and you'll download the latest file, and away you go. Then we'll extract it and get going. Now you'll need Visual Studio Code, which I'll set a link up here for David's video on how to set up Visual Studio Code. It works very similar to setting up Marlin with the BigTreeTech screen. So I'm going to jump in and show you what Visual Studio looks like with it extracted, and we'll get going from there. All right, so we've got our workspace all loaded up. If you've checked out David's video, you'll know how to do that. Now we will open up a project. So we're going to browse to get the project. And then we'll go into the root and open up the file. Now we don't need that. It'll go away. And there we go. We've got our BigTreeTech project all loaded up. Now, all this folder has all the copy to SD card, has all the files you need to get your screen up and running if you're using the defaults. Now, defaults will only help you if you're using an Ender. If you want anything larger than that, you're going to have to make some configuration changes. But if we reveal in File Explorer, this brings up our copy to SD card folder. This folder here has some default files for each of one of their screens. This is the firmware. You will need your configuration.ini copied to the SD card. You'll need a firmware, and you'll need a theme pack. Now you have to go into each of these theme packs. So for example, I want to use the round one, and I choose my screen size. So I have a 5-inch screen, so I'll copy this to the root of the SD card. Do not go inside these folders, always stay at the root. Once you've got this on the SD card, you'll be able to change your theme. Now, changing your theme is all well and good, but if you have a CR10, that sort of thing, that's not going to help you because the screen isn't set up correctly. So you need to configure the screen. So just like with Marlin, you have to open your configuration.ini. Now that sits underneath the BigTreeTech Screen Master folder, under the TFT folder, and under user, and then there's your configuration.h. So I'm going to shrink this side here so we can really see what's going on. So it's set up a lot like Marlin, where all you have to do is remove the slashes to uncomment a file. We've got a lot of different settings in here. There's your baud rate, there's your touchscreen. So you need to know what the dimensions of your printer are, so and what settings you want to do. There's so many settings in here. I'm not going to spend a month on it, but they've got all the standard settings for all the different presets. You can set up your fan type, whether you have multiple hot ends, board, your default feeds and speeds here, extruding speed. And here is one of the more important things. So whatever your settings are in your firmware from Marlin, you're going to have to transfer them into here. So if I have a CR10, I'm going to go 310 by 310 by 25, whatever it is. So you can put your settings into here. If you have an offset position, you need to put that into there so that when you're sending your G-code commands that it sends through the screen, it's accurate. You can preset all your fade values, your probe offset. You can set all that in here. So just make sure you're matching it up to what you have in Marlin when you're getting it all set up. They have really expanded this since last time. You've got boot screen timeout, languages. You've got the knob color. If you want to change the color, you can have it off, which is 0. So I'll just set it to 0. But if you wanted to change it to any one of these colors, you just set it here. The other nice thing they have done is most of these settings now are actually available in the configuration file. So if I go over to the config.ini, if you are not comfortable doing all the settings in Visual Studio, they've broken most of the settings, not all of them, most of the settings out into this configuration.ini file. And it's just a text file, so you can use Notepad++ or any other type of editor to go in here and edit it. And it has similar settings. You just either enable or disable. You can see here the status screen on the home screen. Do you want it on or off? Do you want to set your baud rate? You can quickly go in here and toggle the settings, and away you go. Now, a lot of everything that's in this configuration file is now available in the GUI. So when you go into the advanced menu settings on the touchscreen, you can toggle these settings. Well, the majority of them in the Touch UI setting. I'll show you that a little bit later, but just so you know, that's why you need to make sure the configuration.ini is on there. So if you are upgrading a screen that you've had for, let's say, a year or two, you need to have the specific files on your screen to be able to adjust it. But you'll notice sound settings are in here, custom G-code settings are in here. There's a number of things that are in here, but I did not see bed size in here off the top of my head. So some settings are here, but not all of them. Now we'll just go into the menu. I'm going to show you where the configuration.ini files are stored in the GUI. So then we'll go into settings, and we'll go into machine settings, and then parameters. So a number of these settings in here will save to Marlin and whatnot. You can go and adjust your offsets, linear advanced, TMC drivers, threshold. It's all right in here. We can also go out of here and go into feature settings. Now the feature settings are where all the ini files for the configuration.ini are set. So we will just quickly go through here, but most of the settings are in here. When you hit save in here, it saves them back to the configuration.ini so that you have them. You can always reset it to defaults if you need to in here, and you can also set the color of the knob in here. Okay, so we'll just get an example of how to flash your new file with the new theme and all the files set up. So on the right hand side here I have my SD card, and then on the left hand side I have the folder which contains all the files I need. So if you were to compile your own firmware, you'd have to go in the PIO folder, the build root, find the project that you build and copy it. So now there's nothing in here because we haven't built anything. But we're going to go with the defaults for this example. So we'll go into the copy to SD card folder. We're going to do it on the TFT5. So this is the firmware, so I'm going to copy it across. So we got our firmware there. We need the config.ini, copy it across. I want the round menu items. So I will take the TFT5 folder, copy it across. And now we got the basics set up here for the screen. So now if you are in another country, you may want to put some more language on here. So we'll copy English over, and let's find, I'm not sure if that's German, and let's put on French. So I'm going to put 3 languages onto it also. So we've got our configuration INI, our languages, our firmware, whether you compiled it or you're using the default firmware, and then the TFT5 folder, which has our icons and our font in it. Now that's important to have all of these when we go to flash it. Now that it's saved, we can eject it, we can stick it in, and show you how to flash it. Take the SD card, insert into screen, then restart. And it's loading the firmware. I'm not going to make you suffer through the whole thing. I'm going to speed it up to about 400% and motor through it. But you can see it's progressing fairly well, and it's going to load your Unicode, then it's all your fonts, your languages, your icons, and get it all loaded up. And you can see it flying through all the icons that it's copying on there of the new theme, and there we go. And there we have it, new theme is on. So I thought I'd just go over a couple things before we end this video on how the screens work. The Marlin mode interacts directly with the board. So all the menus and subsystems that you've enabled in the firmware are exposed via Marlin and are controlled directly. When you go into touch mode, it's acting as a host. So it is a computer, it is a Raspberry Pi, it's sending G-code commands. Any of the, when you went to home your printer and whatnot, it's actually using the USB serial bus to send a G28 to the board. Then the board has to perform that action. So that's why you have to have similar commands and parameters set up on the board's firmware so that it knows the accurate size of your printer, because if it's going to send a command to go to a specific corner of your bed for leveling with your on-screen leveling on the touchscreen, it needs to know the size of your bed, because it's not going to use the Marlin side to know that. It is actually stored in the config file and the ROM of the actual screen itself. So it is a host. You can have connectivity issues if you have a computer connected and the screen, or a Raspberry Pi and the screen connected. So you have to make sure that your parameters are set up correctly when you do set it up, because if you get it wrong, you can have communication issues. That's also important to know, that you have to have your bus or your serial connection at 115,200. If you go faster than that, the like 250,000, it will not communicate correctly with the board. It just doesn't have the communication power to do that. And one last thing, I thought I'd show you a picture of it in relation to an Ender, the 5-inch screen, because it's actually comically large. I'm kind of glad now that the 7 was out of stock because I think it's just too big. So here it is. You can see it's quite a bit larger. You're definitely going to have to make a custom mount to make it work. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something that you can use out of this video. If you have questions, put them down below. Feel free to email us. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.